risk. I mean, for example, I am an early adopter when it comes to technology. Usually when a new update for my software or hardware comes out, I'd like to have it. I'd like to try it. I'd like to use it. So I always have the latest operating system version and so on and so on. But when it comes to connecting to a machine and upgrading my brain, I mean, the risks there are incomparable. What if we get it wrong? What if during the operation or after the operation, and as you admitted yourself, the AI has some emerging behaviors or patterns that are unpredictable? So there's always a huge amount of risk, especially if you, I mean, it's one thing I would say, which is still very brave, but it's one thing to connect your hand. It's another thing to connect straight into, matrix type of a connection into your neocortex or something like that. I mean, what about the early adopter risk? I am an early adopter, and I'm scared to do that step that you're eagerly willing to do. And what if we get it wrong at that moment? What happens with you? What happens with the research? What happens with the general trend?
Yeah, well, I would like to have the neocortex or a cortical implant. I know I only look 21, 22, but I am in fact 56, and I sort of feel by the time I get to 60, I'm getting into the ballpark where, yes, I'm ready to take the risk. I've done a lot of things. I've had a lot of fun. I've been with the girl on the park bench and those sort of things. I've done the things that you do, and hence, if something goes wrong, okay, it's going to go wrong. It's taking the risk. If something goes right, then from my point of view, it will be great fun scientifically. I'm sure half the world will grumble at me and say I'm only doing it for publicity and so on, because that's what half the world
Or
does.
you're crazy.
Or I'm crazy, they will say that. Neither of which would be entirely the case, but probably both would have a little bit of truth in them. I mean, it would be doing it for scientific purposes to find out, to be perfectly honest. But it could go wrong. For the last implant, yes, you're right, it wasn't anywhere near as dangerous. But even then, the surgeon said to me before, all right, the chances of something going wrong are not enormous, but they're not zero, particularly infection getting in. And the way they'd done it, they cut away from the nervous system the myelin sheath, the protected sheath. And if infection got in, you could lose the use of your hand. So people say they would give their right hand to do this. Well, I did put my my left hand, I put my hand on the table and said, all right, I could lose this as a result of the experiment. As it happened, it turned out all right and so on. But I could have lost the use of my hand, and then people would say, oh, you silly, you are crazy, and so on. But it was a fairly minor risk in comparison.
But it seems you're willing to put your brain on the table, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, you only have one life. And I believe this is something we can do. We have the technology about now to link a human brain to a computer network. And if only for the communication experiment, that's what I want to do. Yeah, no question about that. I do not want to die without having tried it.
I see. That's most impressive. I consider myself to be a transhumanist, but say I want to make sure it's safe before. So I would be watching for sure how it turns out for you, but I wouldn't be the first one to lie next to the table.
I think when you do it the first time, people say, well, you know what the risks are. When you do something the first time, you don't really know. You know some of the basic elements, like maybe infection gets in, but there's things will happen that you don't know about, and that's tremendously exciting from a scientific point of view, that there are still areas of science that we just don't know, and having a go and having a look at those things is fantastic. But it means you could get it wrong next time.
And in a way, it's like going to the moon or going in space. I mean, you may have done it hundreds of times, but it's anything but routine. Every time
Oh,
that you
yeah.
do it,
Yeah.
it's a enormously complex task requiring enormous focus and amount of resources to come together for success. And I would imagine that would be the case with hooking up our brain with a machine interface.
And what I found before with the experiment, it took a lot of organization, and you're right, bringing a lot of things together. But there seemed to be an enormous number of people who were trying to stop you doing it. And by that, I mean that the surgeons will say, oh, we can't do that because we don't have this piece of technology. We need approval. You have people in the university that are saying, we don't have insurance for doing that. You can't do that. So there's lots and lots of people telling you you can't do it.
Yeah.
But if you want to achieve it, you just have to keep almost don't listen to them and keep pushing, and eventually you get what you're after. So I think as much as the technological problems that we need to face, there are people problems that you have to overcome, all these bureaucratic twaddle that is stopping you doing things.
Mm-hmm. So, right on that topic, my blog's tagline is the question: will technology replace biology? So, am I correct in assuming that, in your mind, in your opinion, the answer is yes?
It's yes-ish. I think it will go hand in hand. Biotech will be the future. So I don't think technology will replace biology, but I think it will walk hand in hand with it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
They're
Then,
sitting on the fence as typical.
and very safe,
Yes,
academically speaking.
exactly. Because I didn't say what percentage. So if it's 99% this, I'll still be right.
Yeah. So, if there is one thing that you would like our listeners and our viewers today to take away from this podcast interview with you, what would that be?
I think the Singularity is a tremendously exciting event for those that want to move forward as a biotech entity, to imagine the world in millions of dimensions, to communicate by thought in terms of emotions and feelings and so on, is a tremendously exciting future. So if you want to be part of it, you probably are going to have to take a few risks in the years ahead. It's up to you, but it's tremendously exciting.
So, if you want to be part of the future, don't be afraid to take on risks.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And but it's exciting to take the risks, go for it. It's like a roller coaster ride. It's scary, but it's great fun. And the thing is here, we don't know where the roller coaster's going. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So, where can people go and find out more about you and your work? Because I'm sure lots of them would be very interested to learn more about you. And I would post, of course, a number of links, but what's the
yeah.
best place to look?
Well, there is a website, www.kevinwarwick.com. But if they Googled, they would probably find quite a bit. And Wikipedia, I think,
Has an
you know,
article.
it's balanced. Yes, I mean, it's not completely positive. Like Ray's is quite. I don't know whether Ray writes his himself, but mine is balanced. I think is how I'd put it. But it's yeah, it gives other perspectives as well.
Very good. Okay. Well, on that note, I would like to thank Professor Kevin Warwick once again for his time and wish him good luck in his work. Also, thanks to all the listeners and viewers of Singularity Podcast. I hope you all enjoyed listening and watching this interview as much as I enjoyed talking to Professor Kevin Warwick. This was another Singularity Podcast, which is a feature of singularityweblog.com, where you can go and listen to the recording or download the interview in full. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola.